Is he starting the recording? Thank you.
Um, Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the EQ webinar. And thank you everyone for joining. So just to start off the webinar. So this is a CESA EQ webinar, and our webinar today will be discussing how we can discover the way EQ can shape engineering. And the event will starting now at 2 and it will end at 3:30. And for this webinar, I'll be a facilitator, Itumeleng Setlhabane. So a bit about myself, I'm a junior civil engineer that is currently employed at Nyeleti Consulting. I'm involved in water engineering projects and my deep passion lies in dam engineering. So hopefully one day I become an APP. And within my other roles, I serve under the CESA committees, namely the CESA YPF Gauteng North Committee, where I am the events coordinator, and the CESA YPF National Committee, where I'm the vice chair and treasurer. So before we start off the event with the program, I'd like to acknowledge our sponsors that make the CESA YPF to have events and to do the work we keep on doing. We'd like to appreciate them. So there on your screen, you'd see the companies that keep sponsoring us. Then if you are a company and would like to sponsor us, you're welcome. Pop us an email and we can arrange that. So our program for today, we'll start off with myself. I did the welcoming and intro. Then our first speaker, we'll have our speakers lined up like that. We have 3 speakers addressing us with 3 different topics that address EQ in different aspects. Then lastly, at the end, we'll have our Q&A. So to everyone, please note your questions in the chats, and at the end, we'll read them. Then lastly, we'll have closing. So just to set off the tone, EQ, I'm sure a bunch of you are asking yourself, what does EQ mean? If you already know, that's fine. But if you don't know what it stands for emotional quotient. And it's like a normal term that is normally used as emotional intelligence. So what is EQ? The ability to recognize, understand, and manage your own emotions and those of others to communicate effectively, lead well, and build strong relationships. And this plays a core component in the daily work that we do as engineers. It is as it helps us with self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. And the importance of having these core components is to enhance collaboration. As engineers, we work in teams, and also is to improve client and community engagement. And I think these two are very important in what we do, because we do everything for our clients and the communities that we're involved in. Second last is to build effective leadership. And lastly is for the support that is required for a successful project. So that's just setting the tone for the EQ, and our speakers would go more into depth as to how these sort of relate to us, how can we use them, and how to sort of acknowledge them and apply them. So our first speaker is Ahmad Vahid, and Ahmad is a research psychology master student at the University of Pretoria with an interest in how people make sense of their lives, particularly through stories, culture, and connection. His work explores the ways in which human experiences shape identity, relationships, and resilience with a focus on the psychology of hope and meaning. He is passionate about bridging research and practice, especially in contexts that consider empathy and collaboration. By drawing on both academic insights and real-world application, he aims to help individuals and teams build deeper awareness, stronger connections, and more effective ways of working together. So now I'll stop sharing and Mohammed will start presenting for you. Over to you, Abraham. Sorry, Abraham. Sorry for that. Can you hear me? Oh, said.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Mic check. Yes, perfect. Over to you.
Perfect. Okay, lovely. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are all well and strapped in for the next hour. My name is, well, now hour and a half. My name is Abdurrahman Wahid, but you already knew that. I'm excited to be delivering a very basic overview of emotional quotient, emotional intelligence. And naturally, to begin to understand EQ, we must start with knowledge from a place of common ground. And so today, I shall begin my presentation with IQ. So, as we all know, intelligence quotient or IQ is widely understood as a numerical value that quantifies an ability or an individual's cognitive abilities and their intellectual potential. It sort of serves as a key indicator of overall intelligence, encompassing many core functions such as reasoning, problem solving skills, memory capacity, and linguistic capability. Scientifically, though, IQ tests aim to measure general aptitude, providing a standardized baseline for assessing cognitive strengths that are crucial for logical thought and analytical processing. Now to go on to what we came here to talk about. Conversely, EQ, emotional quotient, also known as emotional intelligence, is the measure, as we know now, with the beautiful introduction, is the measure of one's ability to perceive, understand, and manage their own emotions while skillfully navigating the emotions of other people. While scientifically conceptualized earlier, like earlier in time, its prevalence mainly surged within the mid 1990s, most notably, and you should pay attention when I say this name because it's going to come up a lot, David Goldman's work. It emerged as a necessary concept when research revealed that high IQ alone did not guarantee success. EQ became relevant because it accounts for the crucial human factors IQ omits, such as empathy, self regulation, and effective socialization skills, making it essential for navigating interpersonal relationships. Now that we know the definitions and have a general understanding of the work as presented within my presentation, it is noted that the impact of these two intelligences, like EQ and IQ, on overall workplace success is very distinct. EQ broadly governs the human ecosystem of organization, which makes it a critical factor when you are looking to create positive culture within the workplace. In contrast, however, intelligence quotient primarily determines an individual's technical competence and analytical efficiency. While this ability is essential for handling, while the IQ ability is essential for handling complex tasks, it is the application of the EQ that differentiates a merely functional employee from somebody who positively elevates the entire team. Next, we look at leadership roles. While a leader's IQ contributes to valuable strategic thinking and technical expertise, which is very important, it is their EQ that allows them to build trust, communicate with other people with empathy, and successfully manage team dynamics, which fosters the loyalty and the motivation that's necessary and essential for true success. Next, the ability to motivate and manage team highlights EQ's direct effect on teamwork. It enhances collaboration by improving interpersonal communication and fostering between two individuals or more a deeper emotional understanding, allowing team members to navigate through social dynamics and work together cohesively. IQ, meanwhile, supports the more technical aspects again of task execution, strengthening the analytical and logical skills which is required to pull off a project. Beyond group interaction, these intelligences also shape an individual's personal management style, particularly in their evaluation style. An individual leaning on their EQ will base assessments more on emotional awareness, adaptability to social cues, and a keen social perception. Conversely, an IQ dominant evaluation style is focused squarely on more objective metrics. So it's like data analysis, logical reasoning, and strictly looking at the factual evaluation of a situation. Then the difference in personal management also extends to how one is able to handle stress and how they can handle pressure. I can tell you right now, was very nervous for this talk, but using EQ, I was able to help myself handle that pressure a little bit more and gain the confidence necessary to present to everyone here. Here, EQ in handling stress and pressure provides the essential tools for emotional self-regulation and resilience, allowing an individual to manage their internal responses and maintain their composure even in very difficult situations. IQ, on the other hand, offers problem solving skills to address the external cause of the stress, but does not inherently provide a mechanism to manage the emotional fallout. The ability to manage internal responses is most critical during conflict resolution. When disagreements arise, an EQ driven approach encourages empathy, negotiation, and taking a situation that's escalated and de escalating it so that the dispute is a lot easier to control. This leads to resolutions that maintain relationships in a healthy manner. A purely IQ based approach, however, relies on logic to assess the issues, which while important when addressing issues, may lack the emotional sensitivity needed to address the underlying human centered problem, leaving them unresolved. It is crucial, however, to reframe discussion not as a competition between two things, but rather a recognition of the existing synergy. True workplace success is a result of a sort of balanced approach that leads leads and yields long-term results. IQ is the threshold ability or the entry ticket into the workplace, providing analytical skills to understand the complex problems and the ability to perform technically. EQ, however, is the factor that enables effective collaboration and navigation of the social workplace. These two are interdependent. Without IQ, EQ can lack strategy and insight. Conversely, without EQ, high IQ can just lack team morale. The most effective individuals that are in the workplace cultivate a potent blend of both. The synergy is the hallmark of outstanding performance. For instance, in decision making, IQ provides critical data analysis, but EQ assesses how that decision will impact stakeholder buy-in, ensuring a choice is not just technically sound, but also successfully implemented. In innovation, for example, an individual's IQ may generate a brilliant idea, but their EQ is what allows them to pitch it persuasively, build a supporting coalition, and gracefully accept any constructive feedback. This blend is also vital in client relationships. A high IQ employee can build the complex solution, but the one with both high EQ and IQ can explain it in more human terms, empathize with all the clients and their concerns. And it this ends up building a long lasting trust and bond between the client and the individual. Ultimately, this integration of a sharp analytical mind and a high perceiving heart is what creates true influence and sustainable success. And now that we have a frame of reference on what EQ is and a basic development of the idea, we can speak on the not so exciting part, in my opinion, but we can speak on the theory. Scientifically, EQ is not a single concept or not a concept that can be understood solely through a single theory, but it is understood in three main ways. The first, as you can see on the screen, is the ability model developed by Meyer and Salovey, which defines EQ as a measurable cognitive skill, much like IQ. It proposes four distinct mental abilities: perceiving emotions in oneself and others, using emotion to assist thought, understanding complex emotional information, and managing emotions to achieve goals. This model is more used objectively with performance tests to see a person's actual capability. The second is the trait model associated with, and I doubt he is going to watch this, this presentation. But if he does, I apologize in advance for mispronouncing the name. but the trait model associated with Petri deals, which sees EQ as a collection of self-perceived dispositions. This model isn't about objective, measurable skill, but more about your personality and your own confidence in your emotional abilities. It includes characteristics like optimism, self-motivation and sociability, and is measured subjectively through self-report questionnaires which individuals rate or use to rate their own emotional tendencies. Now, the most important one, the one that you have now been exposed to, that covers the core components of um, emotional quotient. The two previous models provide a foundation for Daniel Goleman's model, who popularized EQ by blending EQ into a practical framework of five key competencies essential for workplace success. The first is self-awareness. This is the foundation. It is the ability to recognize your own emotions, strengths, and weaknesses. Sorry. This is followed by self-regulation, which is the ability to manage these emotions and impulses, allowing you to think clearly and remain calm under pressure. The third component is motivation, which Goleman defines as an intrinsic drive for achievement, a passion for the work itself rather than external rewards, which fosters resilience and positivity in the long run. These personal skills are complemented by social competencies. The fourth component, empathy, which I'm sure you've all heard of, is the ability to understand and share the feeling of others, which is absolutely crucial for building a supportive and a more inclusive team environment. Finally, and lastly, social skills, which ties all of these four components together. The ability to manage relationships, build networks, and find common ground through effective liaison and conflict resolution is all uh, neatly packed within social skills. Goldman's framework is fundamentally grounded in the idea that these emotional competencies are as essential as cognitive intelligence for getting or gaining successful outcomes. It is lasting importance, or its lasting importance, comes from this practical application, shifting the business focus to advocate for integrating emotional awareness and regulation into leadership development and more organizational practices. In today's fast-paced, interconnected world, its relevance is deeply amplified as organizations more or less face frequent challenges and the rise of remote work. I'm currently working from home as well. Coleman's model provides a clear roadmap for managing complex interpersonal dynamics, whether it is in the workplace or whether it is in your regular living. It serves as a cornerstone for effective leadership in diverse, evolving workplaces, showing how cultivating these competencies or these core components can lead to a more empathetic, engaged, and high performing workforce. Now, before we delve into the nitty gritty, before we delve into what a high EQ individual looks like, I just want to drill down and ensure that everyone understands why it is important. The holistic role of emotional intelligence in the workplace is extremely profound as it acts as a critical determinant for, as I've mentioned, organizational success. These are the results of effective usage of EQ within the workplace. Its benefits begins with the enhancement of more effective leadership, as mentioned before as well. As emotionally intelligent leaders can manage not only their own emotions, but they can also look at their subordinates, understand what they're going through, which allows them to guide teams with not only the correct motivation that is influencing them, but also with the ability to adapt that motivation so that it helps everyone else. This leadership directly fuels the improvement of team performance by fostering a cohesive and a very high collaborative environment. The focus on empathy and support is fundamental for the promotion of employee well-being, as EQ enhances resilience and helps employees manage workplace stresses more easily. So it improves adaptability by allowing employees to have the room and to have the space to work around their stresses without feeling completely overwhelmed all of the time. A core mechanism for this is the facilitation of improved communication. Individuals attuned to nonverbal cues can express themselves well, they can express themselves in a very clear manner, which overall reduces workplace conflicts because it favors constructive solutions over escalations via the usage of improved communication. This open, empathetic atmosphere also promotes more flexibility, as we mentioned, more agility, and an ability to be more responsive to change. There's no friction within the change if there's room for breathing. As communication and flexibility improve, enhanced trust between team members is established, which forms the bedrock of mutual respect and true collaboration. When employees feel trusted, when employees feel understood, when employees feel supported, the clear outcome becomes higher job satisfaction, which is beneficial for everyone. This combination of positive engagement and effective stress management provides a direct defense against emotional exhaustion, which leads to a less likelihood of burnout for your employees and for yourself, which allows you to be more productive in the long run, which also allows you to be more satisfied with your job, as mentioned prior. Finally, all of these benefits are built upon the foundation of just generally good self-awareness, which empowers each employee personally to understand their own strengths and weaknesses, which fosters a culture of, it just enables individuals to just continuously grow in the workplace, which ultimately leads to my point, which is EQ is not a soft skill, but it is a vital mechanism for a more resilient and harmonious workplace. Now, beyond theoretical benefits, EQ manifests in tangible, everyday actions that demonstrates professional maturity. So you're probably wondering, what are the habits of an individual with high IQ? We've learned all about the benefits now. How do we get to that point? Well, thank you for asking. I'm so glad you asked. Habits that high EQ individuals have include responding positively to new initiatives. This shows a more willingness to contribute, and it allows you to ask clarifying questions, which ensures alignment more with the task at hand. It also displays it, it is displayed through communicating effectively, which allows you to speak respectfully, understand the emotional context of colleagues, and avoid negative comments that generally would decrease morale. This interpersonal skill also extends to socialization and networking. We all know that networking is the future, and being able to do that, it builds a rapport. Being able to network builds rapport with different colleagues, and that rapport can help you diffuse tense situations, and in general just strengthen team support. A high IQ individual is also shown to be active when they support others, whether it be helping people with tasks or sharing career opportunities to cultivate stronger relationships with the team, and more so enabling individuals to and giving them the confidence to push and to go for that promotion or to reach for things that they deserve. Finally, critically, it involves taking responsibility for mistakes rather than assigning blame or looking to assign blame. And when you look at these mistakes, by being high EQ individual, you can reflect upon your mistakes a lot easier to notice these ideas and to take them more as learning opportunities. Finally, it means handling criticism maturely, accepting that feedback is going to come. You're not going to always like it, but you have to accept it enthusiastically and utilize that feedback as a as a tool for growth, and offering, and allow people to offer you constructive criticism and to offer constructive criticism to others just to help them develop. Now, it is important to note that EQ is a skill that can be polished and practiced. Developing a higher EQ is a bit difficult, but through this intentional practices, a higher EQ can be attained. Um, a higher EQ can be attained. The first method that I will share, because these are all methods that are reflected more within psychology rather than specifically curated for engineers. The first method is the development of active listening, which is the practice of fully concentrating on a speaker or fully concentrating in a conversation to make people feel heard and valued, which builds stronger relationships and reduces misunderstandings. In the workplace, this is more implemented by maintaining eye contact, avoiding distractions, and paraphrasing. This is an important one. When you're talking to somebody, paraphrasing, once they finish their part of the dialogue and you've listened, you paraphrase back to them to confirm that you do understand what they are saying and that moving forward, you now have a shared foundation of which you can proceed. This ensures that all team members feel respected and that a truly cohesive environment is uh, fostered. After processing this data or this information externally, this data or information must be processed internally, which is achieved through reflection. This practice, often done by journaling, involves examining one's own thoughts, emotions, and reactions to workplace situations. Its purpose is to gain deeper. Sorry?
You have 2 minutes left to sort of about the
Theater.
presentation. Sorry to disturb you.
Okay, okay, let me just hurry up then. Its purpose is to gain personal insight and to more recognize behavioral patterns that need adjustment. You can support this by incorporating reflection time within the workplace and within your own time. And you can also, importantly, ask others to assist you with this. The next is reading, which allows you to understand the necessary tools which is necessary to understand the vocabulary of emotionality within the difficult frameworks. By reading, you improve your own emotional empathy and allows you to manage your emotions much easier. Observation is works with active listening, which allows you to interpret non-verbal emotional cues that active listening might miss. This is such as body language and tone of voice, which is crucial for developing conflict resolution. And this can be done through role playing and consciously noting other people's emotional state. The other is the pause. The pause is a quick 3 second thing you can do before responding to somebody. You take 3 seconds to yourself and you move on. Before responding, you make sure you maintain a valid emotional state that allows you to understand what's going on. Lastly, is the labeling. So instead of saying things like "I feel bad" or "I feel good," you can utilize this emotion wheel that is easily accessible by all to understand your emotions a lot better. So the next time you encounter it, you have a much easier time. So to go through these workplace scenarios, I normally would, but I seem to be running out of time. So I will say that these 5 situations: receiving critical feedback, addressing a colleague's underperformance, mediating team disagreements, navigating resource constraints, and motivating a discouraged team member, are all situations that you might run into. Um, in doing so, when it might feel like your first approach needs to be defensiveness when you approach these situations. Each situation a little bit more difficult, and each situation might incur some difficult emotions. But you need to acknowledge what is being said, say that you appreciate feedback, and ask for improvements. Can I quickly conclude? Sorry.
I'm sorry, Abdul, we have to close it because the next speaker has to speak. It's going into their time now. I'm
Okay,
sorry. But
perfect.
I'm sure in the Q&A, people will ask you questions and perhaps you can delve deeper into maybe what you've presented. But thank you for the wonderful presentation. Liked the wheel. So now I will introduce the next speaker. Abdul, can you stop sharing if you can?
Sorry, I'm looking. See, is it not? There we go.
Yeah, perfect. Now I can share. So for our next speaker is Juta Kendi Kent. Yes. She's a civil engineer with 20 years of experience in the engineering industry. 17 as a registered professional. She began her career in municipal engineering within the water and sanitation discipline. where she spent 8 years before moving into private consulting for a decade. Seeking broader industry insights, she joined a contractor in construction engineering for 2 years, later returning to consulting for another 2 years before founding her own consultancy in 2021. In 2023, she joined Talbot, where she now leads the implementation business unit, overseeing multidisciplinary projects. Throughout her career, Juta has pursued studies in finance and project management, equipping her with strong expertise in project scoping, development, execution, and stakeholder coordination. Her current interests include construction, adjudication. Outside of work, she enjoys gymming, stand-up pedal boarding, and relaxing with a good glass of wine. I think you can see it in the picture, but yeah. Thank you. So over to you, Juta. I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you, Tumaleng, for that friendly introduction.
You're welcome. I think you can project. I can hear you. I'll tell you when I see your presentation, then I'll mute myself. Yes, I can see it.
Thank you.
Just put it in. Yeah, perfect. I think I'm done here.
Thank you, Tumaleng, and thank you, Abdul, for your good foundation on EQ. I think it's always good to understand the basis of its definitions and how people present EQ. So I'll be talking about EQ in the engineering space and why emotional intelligence matters on site. And I just need to, there we go. So the items I'll be covering are EQ versus the engineer. Note the versus, stakeholder interfaces and EQ, project risk mitigation and EQ, EQ and forms of contract, and then the Q&A will come a little bit later in the presentations. So firstly, when we talk about EQ versus the engineer, it's not very common to put EQ and the engineer into one sentence. The engineer profile doesn't generally include emotional intelligence. And why not? We have to start asking ourselves. Generally, engineers are known as to be dour, have zero humor, to be serious, and to be non-sparkling. So is it time to change this? And how would we include EQ into the engineering space? And is it beneficial? These are the questions we'll be answering in the next few slides. I think to a certain degree, EQ already plays a role in the engineer's life, but maybe it's a little bit intangible or oblique, and maybe focusing on it and starting to acknowledge it will assist how we perform our duties and how we conclude projects. And I think it is a beneficial aspect because really, as Abdul has described, it will be beneficial to all stakeholders and all parties within a team, within a project. Oh, and we're solutions orientated. So the stakeholder interfaces and that can benefit from an EQ focus would fall into two categories within the engineering space. You've got your consultant-client interface, and then also your project team, which is your consultant, contractor, client, and project manager interface. So that will be the next slide. So to talk about the consultant and client interface, generally we all know what a consultant's job is. You get a scope of work from the client and it might be quite clinical. Please design me a pipeline that goes from A to B. It needs to be this pipe material, and you work out what diameter it needs to be, and you work out the route. But what if we add a little bit more to that? As a consultant, I think it's important to always understand the environment that the client works in. What is the bigger picture? What is upfront from that pipeline, and what is downstream from that pipeline? Who are you providing the service to? What boundaries are you crossing? Are there ward boundaries? Is it potentially a bit of a political hot potato? And understanding the client, I think, is a very important aspect. And these are aspects of emotional intelligence, not just stoically doing your design work, but looking at the bigger picture and asking questions to understand the softer issues which potentially provide value engineering opportunities. So I gave an example there of the pipeline and allowing us to do value engineering. An engineer in my past said to me once, always ask yourself, what causes your client not to sleep at night? It's not just the fact that he needs a pipeline. That's just a request for information or a scope of work. But what is the bigger aspect of what he or she is trying to do, and try and answer that question. And with that comes a requirement for EQ as you pursue that knowledge. So within the project management consultant, contractor, and client space, so i.e. a project team, this is now when you actually implement a project on site, you have to mitigate risks. It's basically, we all understand that it has to do with risk mitigation. If the project manager is not driven by EQ, you often have a very non-aligned team, and that can cause a risk to be increased. The reason I say that is you will always have risks on a project, but with EQ, you can mitigate those risks in a different way because, and I will go through those points, each party is present for a reason. So there's equality across the different stakeholders around the table. Know the skill sets around the table. Understand who is good at doing what so that you can lean in on that strength when a risk presents itself that needs to be mitigated in that side of work. Know the experience around the table. Sometimes you've got the old man or lady sitting in the corner and they've had years worth of experience. Talk to them, find out what their opinions are, and use it in mitigating your project risk. Allow for open and often robust but respectful dialogue, and share risks rather than delineate them. Lead with care and respect rather than confrontational tendency. I want to ask you all to start thinking about an example of a project that you've worked on that just didn't have synergy. The team members were not aligned. There was a lot of confrontation. The client was never happy and things just didn't flow. And then think about a project where it seemed easy. You wanted to attend meetings. The outcome was strong. Everybody was aligned. And even though there were risks and robust conversation, you had fun and you wanted to go to work. And that can be as a result of people applying emotional intelligence around the table and focusing on being a team. So outcomes to the project, if you have a strong EQ presence, it's fun. The project team feels strength as a unit rather than strength as an individual ego. The project has a positive pulse. The results are tangible and celebrated. Think about a good old Satbra, and you want to work with each other again in the future. And everyone makes their profit margin and the client gets his requirement or her requirement fulfilled. And I think that is important. We often see EQ as being an intangible, soft aspect, but trust me, you can, with EQ, actually convert that into a tangible outcome. And my next slide will talk about that. In projects, as I said, the risk mitigation is the main aim of the game. So you have to, and before I carry on about the two funnels, generally it is a good idea that the team forms a shoal, a strength in numbers, but sometimes you always get those fish that go against the stream. And somebody, and especially if they're project managers without emotional intelligence, can disrupt what should be a flowing project. In the first diagram, you see what makes up a project, your typical scope of work and a specification, your budget, and someone with a little bit of EQ. And then, or a team with a small amount of EQ. And then you have a same project, scope and spec, you have a budget, and you have a large amount of EQ in the project team. And what are the differences in terms of the outcome? You will always have risk, but it's how the risk is mitigated as a team versus as a confrontational approach that often makes the difference in a successful project, what is deemed successful or what is deemed unsuccessful. In a team that has low EQ, you can potentially have higher project costs. Why? Because variations and claims, everything is confrontational. The contractor becomes devious. Everything is hidden, and there is no transparency across the team, and that will increase your costs for everybody. You potentially run out of time, and we all know that that pushes P's and G's up, and it will cost the client more, or the contractor more, or the consultant more, or the project manager more. And in the end, you have an unhappy client with no return business and reputational risk for the companies involved. In a project with emotional intelligence, you still have risk, you still have robust conversations, but generally your costs are lower because you mitigate risks as a team. You generally can try and work within the time provided to you to complete the project, which ensures that your costs are capped or driven or kept to a minimum. And in the end, you have a happy client, you potentially have return business, and your reputation is intact. So my last few slides is how do we actually, how are we already implementing EQ within our day-to-day? You might not even realize it, that they are actually already contractually inserted into the forms of contract that we use on a daily basis. So the forms of contract I'll be referring to are the NEC 3 or 4, FIDIC 1999 and 2010 documents, the GCC and the JBCC edition 6.2 May 2018, as well as relevant guidelines and golden principles. So just to reiterate, your NEC and your FIDIC are internationally based contracts. Your GCC and your JBCC are South African based contracts, and it's quite interesting how the contracts, forms of contract actually deal with what could be seen as EQ aspects. So talking about the youngest form of contract, the NEC 3 and now also the NEC 4, the first core clause, you open the book's page, the first clause that you read is, the employer, the contractor, the project manager, and the supervisor shall act as stated in this contract and in a spirit of mutual trust and cooperation. Where have you ever heard of a contract that starts off with, we will be working as a team? And please note the word shall. Shall is not if you want to, if you feel like it, it would be nice to. It's a guideline. It says shall. It is a contractual obligation that the team is expected to work in a spirit of mutual trust and cooperation. That sets the tone for the whole remainder of the contract, because there's an expectation that you mitigate risk as a team. And another thing to note is that the word shall within the NEC is used possibly between 3 and 4 times in the whole document, and this is one of them. So this is an extremely important core clause to take into consideration. Going along with that, clause 14.4 and 24.2 talks about the ability to replace people within the project team with the agreement of the contractor or the other parties. You are allowed to put your hand up if you believe that somebody in the project team is not working to the spirit of mutual trust and cooperation, and they may be swapped out, which is very important. It allows for that first core clause to actually be implemented correctly. So I read up on the guideline that was that you can receive with the NEC 3 and 4 documents. What was the basis of this thinking of the people who authored that form of contract? And I've highlighted just a few aspects in yellow. I won't read the whole chapter. So this aspect of ECC, which is NEC, is founded upon the proposition that foresighted cooperative management of the interactions between the parties can reduce the risks inherent in construction and engineering work. For the different parties to contribute to the management of a project upon improved practices and to motivate all parties, isn't that a positive thing rather than being confrontational? The employers, designers, contractors, and project managers to work collaboratively. And use of the ECC is intended to lead to a much reduced risk to the employer of cost and time overruns and of poor performance of the completed projects, increased likelihood of achieving a profit for the contractor and its subcontractors and suppliers. So everybody makes their money, which is what we all need to do in these times, and the risks are mitigated by a collaborative approach. Looking at other forms of contract, you have the FIDIC 1999 versus 2017. So there's a good 7-8 years in between those two forms of contract when they were released. And you can already see the evolvement of EQ within the 2017 versus the 1999 contract. Specifically, the first clause, subclause 3.4 is from 1999, 3.6 replacement of the engineers from 2017. Just the length shows you that there's already more mind provided to EQ aspects that have lengthened that clause. In the first one, 3.4, again, the employer has the right to change people out within the project team with the agreement and consensus of the contractor, which is important. And the word shall is used again. So legally, it's an obligation. Within the 2017 clause, replacement of the engineer,
Rita,
yes.
sorry to disturb, you have 2 minutes left.
I'm nearly finished. So within the replacement of the engineer for 3.6, they just basically now have added that a temporary status can be provided, and that also is a leaning in the right direction. Then what I did is I read the FIDIC golden principles, because these are the reasons, these are the golden threads that the authors of the FIDIC try to ensure need to be followed within the FIDIC form of contract. And the one that stood out was golden principle number 5. All formal disputes must be referred to a dispute avoidance adjudication board. So for the first time, we're now talking about avoiding a dispute, not just taking a dispute straight to adjudication and then arbitration. So again, EQ will allow a dispute to be avoided through mitigating action. GCC, silent on the topic. Very conflict-free approach. JBCC, again, has that ability to swap out people within the team. So they're just more muted on the EQ aspects. And that was the end of my conversation. So, Itumeleng, I hope that you're good with that. And then the questions and answers, I'll be happy to answer any of those at the end. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jutta. That was perfect, exactly on time. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. As Jutta mentioned, please write your questions in the Q&A box. All your questions will be answered at the end of the third speaker's presentation. And yeah, hopefully we'd have a good conversation by then. So to introduce our third speaker, is Verona Modley. Verona Modley is a specialist in development of meteorology at Rio Tinto's Richards Bay Minerals Plant. A chemical engineer graduate from the University of Cape Town. Her 7-year career span includes melting, milling, and hotel and xenon mineral separation. Rising from graduate to process engineer and into middle management, she has led several technical initiatives, including projects that cut mineral analysis turnaround time from 1 hour into 2.5 minutes. Over time, Verona's view of leadership evolved from believing titles defined leaderships to realizing that true leadership stems from emotional intelligence, listening, empathy, and putting people first. This shift shaped her approach to leading teams with authenticity and accountability. Today, she combines her passion for innovation with a people-focused mindset, creating environments where individuals and processes thrive. In this webinar, Verona shares insights on emotional intelligence, workplace dynamics, and encouragement and humility behind genuine leadership. Over to you, Verona.
Thank you, Itumeleng. Sorry, just checking, you can hear me, right?
Perfect.
And you can see my slides.
Yes, I can see it now.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you so much, and thank you to the other speakers as well. very insightful basis in terms of the theoretical and the practical. So I think if I just had to summarize what my presentation's geared at, it's more looking at my personal encounters with EQ over my 8 years that I've been with Rio Tinto, with the last 3 years being more focused on leadership because that's where I transitioned into more of a management or middle management role. So I just want to take you on that journey with me. So starting off with the perception. So everyone's perception is different. However, I found that in the engineering or maybe more technical industries, there are some biases, and the biases that I've encountered and also have led to believe myself in my early career were that smart equals success, that showing emotion is unprofessional, and that logic and emotions don't mix. So from a young age, I was taught to value education, and it did form like a part of me associating intellect with my self-worth. So therefore, I kind of geared how I behaved and acted around intelligence and developing my knowledge base. But the reality is IQ gets you the job, but not the promotion. And I'm just echoing what my fellow panelist also mentioned. In terms of when you combine IQ with EQ, what does it get you? It gets you to the top and it keeps you and your team moving up. So I just want to take you through a personal experience, and I call it my EQ wake-up call because it really changed my life, this experience. So if I just go through the situation. So it happened when I started in 2017. I was a graduate metallurgist, highly focused on developing technical skills, and I used knowledge and information to impress people. And how did I do that? I threw work-life balance out the door, and I just focused on working really hard. And then as I got through my first stage, which is the first promotion to a metallurgist, I was moved to a new plant. I started afresh, and then I started to see my attitude declining very slowly, and I could see my tolerances were becoming much lower, and my tolerances specifically for mistakes and transgressions were much lower. I felt less motivated to come to work. It was really difficult to deal with people, and I was in the state of constant frustration and anxiety. And the reason I felt this way was because for the first time, I was forced to basically encounter people actually, I had to encounter people that didn't really care. They were people that were more self-motivated, and I didn't know how to manage myself around these kinds of personalities. It wasn't everyone, of course, because I mean, you'll always be dealing with different people. So this was kind of like the transition to the turning point of this parabola, which basically I called my EQ wake-up call. It was in a production meeting. I basically became noticeably angry and disrespectful, and I ended up shouting at one of the superintendents. And just to put it in perspective, he was 2 levels above me at the time that this happened. And honestly, I didn't think in a million years that I was capable of this at all. I didn't see it coming. It just happened. And it was obviously a product of emotions that I had suppressed and left to build up and fester. So what kind of happened after that? The aftermath. So I had to apologize to the superintendent, and I had to apologize to all the people that were in that production meeting. I felt so embarrassed and so shameful, I was avoiding people for the longest time during that period. And honestly, the reason it was the wake-up call for me was because I really needed to look within and see what was happening. So the first step, I guess, in this journey to becoming more emotionally aware and intelligent is I requested to move plants. And luckily for me, I had the opportunity to move to another plant because I did deem the environment that I was working in very toxic. And if I wanted to kind of grow and heal from it, it wasn't going to be serving me staying there. So I requested to move, and thankfully I was able to move. So when I looked at the experience and I kind of just broke it down, I looked at the situation, I kind of looked at it in the following structure. So I looked at a situation or trigger, the behavior or the mindset associated with that, the consequence of that, and then also what I learned through reflection. So the first one was that I had this strong desire to prove myself and to build this technical credibility. So I worked excessive hours, threw work-life balance out the door. And what did that lead to? Burnout, declining motivation. And in reflection, technical capability is not sustainable in the long run. Just focusing on the technical was not going to be sustainable. I needed to address the emotional and mental side of work for critical long-term performance and sustainability. The second one was this pressure to meet high standards and to impress people. This was kind of like a personality trait for me, and I think it is, if I'm not mistaken, something that's shared along with a lot of technical people. What did that kind of make me become? It made me become much more less tolerant of mistakes, specifically my own mistakes, but then I used to project that on others because I wasn't aware that this was affecting me. And obviously, this led to much more increased frustration when dealing with people and also participating in a team. The learning and the reflection from this was that if I wanted to work or collaborate, having this mentality was not going to foster collaboration. It was not going to build trust in my teams, and also patience and empathy are like essential in order for building the trust that is required to work in a team. The third one was I bottled up my stress and my emotions. So I was always taught that you don't show emotions in the workplace because it's unprofessional. And so I confuse that with just suppressing it, putting it under sweeping it under the carpet and just leaving it there, not actually addressing it. And what did that end up leading to? Me having an outburst in a meeting. And obviously, the learning from this is emotional regulation. There's nothing wrong with feeling emotions, but regulating them is where like the value lies, because emotions kind of drive innovation. They drive um, people to work together and things to happen. So it's not a bad thing to have them, but you shouldn't react like unregulated. And then the last one, which is actually really, this one was quite difficult to manage, and it was really, really difficult for me, was publicly losing my temper in this production meeting. Obviously, the behavior was I ended up shouting at a senior colleague, and the consequence, which is quite serious, is that I damaged my professional image and relationship. And the thing is, you can do like 100, 1,000 good things, but as soon as you do that one thing that's unfavorable, you literally throw that credibility out the door, and it damages your relationships, your reputation. And I think that's a big learning for me, is that had I been able to regulate the emotion, I would have never had handled it that way, and therefore never have damaged the relationship. So I guess I can't control like the reaction of other people, but what I do going forward can help me be better and obviously have better relationships going forward. So that was kind of a summary of my EQ wake-up call. The next section that I wanted to go through was, now from that turning point, I've kind of started on a journey of like growing my EQ and moving into a leadership role. So these are the key things that I've kind of learned and takeaways. So I've kind of just selected the ones that have really helped me in the last like 4 years. And I hope there's something you can take away from it. So the first one is self-awareness. So understanding yourself, understanding your values. The easiest way to do this is to just Google a list of values and pick 3 values that resonate with you. That would be the start of helping you to find your purpose, because once you understand your values, you can connect it to your work or vice versa. You can, where you are, you can connect it to your work. The second thing that really helped me, which I highly recommend, is this DISC assessment. So the DISC assessment, it basically compares your natural tendencies and your learned behaviors. And the term is nature versus nurture. So what I learned from this is that what do I naturally want to do, or like how do I naturally react in a situation? And then I try to understand, does the situation call for my natural reaction, or do I need to adapt it? And then obviously that's going to take a lot more effort and a lot more work because it's going out of my comfort zone. So it really taught me that, in terms of leadership, which is situational, it calls for different leaders in different situations. You're going to have to understand where you can be you can lean into your natural tendencies, or where you have to actually start to learn and adapt and learn new skills, sorry. So the next one is emotional regulation. So this one, because being an engineer, I don't know if a lot of the people here are familiar with process control, but hopefully this isn't trauma from campus and university. How I visualize emotional regulation is as a feedback loop. If I just had to take you through it very simply, because this is how I actually learned it and learned how to use it. You get a disturbance that comes into the system. That would be the equivalent of some change in a situation, a trigger, stress, conflict, something like that. And then that invokes an emotional response. You feel some sort of emotion. Then you've got the sensor. Your sensor is your self-awareness. It helps you to identify the emotion you're feeling. Some emotions are very clear and clear-cut. Some of them are actually a bit hard and more gray to identify. So it takes work to try to understand those ones. Then you've got a set point, which is like your desired emotional state, and that's dependent on you. For me, it's like calm, content. Then you've got the controller. Now, the controller takes in the set point and it takes in what you've actually, your present value, your current emotion. And basically, it's your cognitive controller compares the emotion and your goal of what you want to be, and then now starts to adjust the reaction. The actuator, which is like a valve opening in the field, will be like you adjusting your behavior, adjusting your tone, your words, or your actions. And then I just included the delay. Sometimes these things can take time to tune your controllers because you may not get it right every time. But with practice, you might minimize this delay completely. And then you'll always have your present value equal to your set point. And that's basically emotional regulation in a nutshell. So basically, my advice is tune your emotional controllers. The next one is feedback. Very, very important. And I know one of the panelists, Abdurrahman, he touched on how important this is. So there were 3 models that I was taught on a leadership course. Highly recommend if you have the opportunity or create the opportunity to attend a leadership course early in your career because it's life-changing. The first is the SBI model, which is your situation, behavior, impact model. So it's very simple. You describe the situation, you describe the behavior, and you describe the impact it had on you with the person. If I had to give you an example, maybe I was very stressed at work, and my colleague could see that I was noticeably stressed and frantic and very non-responsive to her. She then, I don't know, bought me a chocolate or a coffee and left it on my desk, and that would be the behavior. And then the impact of that, the reaction I felt was, wow, I took a stop or pause to understand that, okay, this made me feel really cared for. It was great, and thank you for that, and reduced my stress. So it's a very simple example, but that's basically the application of it. It doesn't have to be major feedback. You can apply it to major feedback like performance updates, but it can be any type of feedback. The second one is just to understand the types of feedback that are available to you. You've got your own feedback. The only thing with your own feedback is it is subject to something called cognitive bias. So that is developed over your experiences in life. So you may look at a situation very differently to somebody else, and also like your reactions and your thoughts and beliefs around it can be very different, and your perception, sorry. The second is other people's feedback, and others' feedback, again, also comes with some caveats. And the caveats are that sometimes you have people that have your best interest at heart and sometimes you don't. So just to take note of that, I'll explain how it works together. And then the third, if it's applicable and it's within your beliefs, it would be your belief in a higher power, the feedback from a higher power. When you combine all 3 feedbacks, this is how you regulate or you calibrate your feedback. So if you only look at your own feedback, you might be subject to bias. If you look at the feedback of others and say this person doesn't have your best interest at heart, then again, you might be getting the wrong feedback or adjusting your behaviors in a negative way. And then obviously your beliefs is tying into your purpose and your value. Then the last thing that I learned is this concept of a 5 genuine positives to 1 constructive feedback bank account system. I call it the bank account. I think the idea is that you want to maintain, psychologically, we are designed to always respond more harshly to constructive criticism than positive. We need to have more positive than negative. So obviously, it's hard to like maintain this with one specific person. So if you walk up to like a colleague, you're not going to go give them 5 compliments and then give them a constructive criticism. I just say that just make sure you're handing out more positive than you are critical or constructive feedback. That's if you can do that and everyone does that, then we will have overall more positive feedback and genuine. I just want to stress genuine positive feedback. Please make it genuine. No, like, otherwise it's if it sounds disingenuous, people are not willing to believe that. Yeah, and then the last part is that plan your difficult conversations. It's a tip I learned with my manager actually. He actually used to design a scenario and then we'd role play it. I know it sounds very awkward, and in the first time I did it, I was really awkward, but really like think about what you're going to say and try to role play with somebody that you trust. Alternatively, if that's a bit too like difficult or stressful for you, you can use AI. I've done it before. I've profiled like somebody that I needed to talk to in AI and I said, please, can you have a conversation with me around this topic? And I told them that this person is like this, this, and this, and then we had the conversation. So maybe that can also help you. The next one is building psychological safety. Google's Aristotle project basically identified that the #1 predictor for team success is psychological safety. And basically, what is psychological safety? It means so psychological safety means feeling safe to speak up, make mistakes, and share ideas without the fear of being judged, embarrassed, punished, or judged. And then I just kind of highlighted 5 ways. I'll just go through the first 3 of them of how you can create psychological safety at work. So the first one is to model vulnerability as a leader. The ability to own your mistakes and not to appear perfect to your team really helps to build psychological safety. The second one is open dialogue. So that means getting the voice of everyone, even the quiet people in the room, showing them that their voice matters. And then the third one is to respond with curiosity and not blame. Because if you create an environment where people feel safe to make mistakes, that's where the biggest growth and innovation thrives. The second to last point was leadership through connection. I think the biggest thing I learned here, which I'm not sure if many people know, there are 3 types of empathy. The first type of empathy, which, yes.
Hello, I just wanted to say there's 2 minutes left.
Yes,
Sorry.
no problem. I'm almost done. Yeah. Okay. So the first type of empathy is cognitive empathy, and this is what I think where majority of people stop, which is to understand a person's way of thinking intellectually. So that's understanding that this person thinks like this, and this. But a lot of people fail to reach the second and third levels. The second level is to feel what a person's feeling, and the third level is to actually take what they're feeling and turn that into supportive action. And if you can achieve this, at the end of the day, all people want is to be seen, heard, and understood. So I matter, you notice me, my voice has value, and to be understood is you get where I'm coming from. The last one was communication mastery, and I think my colleague also touched on it. It's to do with the levels of listening. I'm just going to brief over it in the essence of time. But there are 4 levels of listening. The first is downloading. Factual is the second, empathetic, and then generative. Downloading is where you listen to confirm what you know. Factual listening is to listen to learn new facts about a topic. Empathetic listening is to understand how a person's feeling, and then generative is to basically be connected to something bigger than yourself. You're open to change. You're open to, collaborate. Yeah. So just in terms of the key takeaways, first one is emotion is not a weakness. It is data from ourselves, and we need to learn to interpret it and optimize our experience. The second is connection, not control, builds trust. So people don't want to follow perfectionism. They follow authenticity. When you lead with care, you unlock the best in others. And the third is innovation is logic powered by emotion. When people care deeply, they create boldly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Verona, for the wonderful presentation. So that is our last speaker. Just to emphasize, everyone, please list your questions. We're going to start our Q&A just now. Please list your questions there. Then, yeah, we'll go into it. Then, if possible, so how the Q&A will work, I'll list the question. Then, based off of the question, I will either, looking at the question, say it is directed to speaker 1, 2, or 3. Then we'll give a chance to the speaker to answer the question. Then hopefully by the end of our session, we've answered all the questions. So keep sending your questions to everyone. So just to end off with all what the speakers have said, engineering may solve problems of matter and motion, but emotional intelligence solves the problem between people. So I think this message sort of emphasizes what everyone has been saying, all the speakers, and I hope all the attendees and attendants got that and they've listed their questions. So yeah, now we'll start the Q&A. Just give me a moment to get through to the questions. I'll stop sharing. Yeah, now I see it. So the first question that we have is it's a question. Okay, it's a question from Godfrey. He's asking Abdul. So the question is, does emotionally intelligent EQ play a role in shaping the experience of hope?
Okay, so to briefly touch upon that, yes, emotional intelligence does play a role in shaping your experiences of hope, mainly through, from what I've noticed through my own research, is through identifications of emotions. When people look at situations of hope and when they look at ideas on how their hope is presented, a big idea that people get wrong is an inability to identify what emotion that they are going through. So by being more emotionally intelligent and by tapping into the ideas or awareness of emotions, one is able to shape their experiences of hope in a way that's true to themselves, that is more holistic to what their experience is, as opposed to just, what a lot of people do is, what I've noticed is that they take their emotions and their ideas all from from previous situations or from other people, and they fail to recognize internally what it means to them. So by reflecting internally, they can understand how their own hope is experienced and what it means to them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that answer. Then my second question is for Juta. In multidisciplinary projects, how can engineers use EQ to bridge communication gaps between technical and non-technical teams?
Thanks for the question. I think the answer is in the question. You've got to bridge the communication gap. So if you have technical and non-technical teams, say, for example, a non-technical team could be a client who's not in the engineering industry, or it could be a stakeholder, inhabitants that need to move from their plot of land, and you've got to engage with these stakeholders. It's about using layman terms to explain what it is that you are doing so that they can understand how to address their fears. Often people have communication gaps grow because people are too nervous to put questions forward, and it is through consistent, easy communication that those gaps can be closed. Put yourself in their shoes. Take time to schedule regular meetings, even if you say there's nothing to talk about. I once had a meeting where everybody said, oh, we've got nothing to talk about, and that meeting ended up being 2 hours long. Interesting. So there was something to talk about, and provide that platform. And also make sure that they feel that they can trust you. At the end of the day, Verona mentioned, be honest and authentic when you're providing your EQ, because if they trust you, then they know that they are being heard and that their concerns are being listened to, and they might actually even form part of the risk mitigation team in providing solutions. So I think it's about honesty and providing the platforms to communicate.
Thank you. Thank you for your wonderful answer. Then the next question is addressed to Verona. Could you please say the list of values so that so I think here, let me just paraphrase this question. So since you've mentioned that in your EQ to sort of have the list of values that are there for yourself, which you must Google. Personally, what list of values do you have for yourself personally, which you implement in your team
Oh,
on IQ? Yes.
okay. So I did paste one in the chat now for people to like look over. Obviously, I just quickly Googled it, but I'm sure there's more comprehensive lists out there. So for example, like I just want to distinguish that personal values and then your company values can be different. And I think how you know there's an organizational fit for you is when you see an overlap of your personal values and the organization's values. So my organization's values are care, courage, curiosity. I resonate with all of them. And so that's why like I really do try to implement those ones when I work with my teams, and also from a personal perspective, like caring, being honest, authentic, and having integrity are the things that I genuinely value, as well as knowledge, because being an engineer, you always wanting to learn. That's, yeah, my take on it.
Okay, thank you, Verona. To Abdul, this is your question now. These are my questions for each speaker. So starting with Abdul, in the context of South Africa, is the implementation of EQ versus IQ implemented in the employment of people in the company? This can range from CEO to a general worker.
Hi, thank you for the question. So just to confirm, you're asking if it is implemented within South Africa.
Yes.
So from my experiences in the workplace, from approaching multiple different, I would say, companies in general, from what I am able to tell, it is implemented as mentioned by Juta. Sorry if I mispronounced their name. It is implemented within contractual obligations from the get-go in terms of how you should approach these situations. And from what I can tell, there are various companies, each within different faculties, not even just engineering, that if uh, from an overview perspective, each layer of management seems to have been and has approached a sort of EQ and IQ perspective. So they have taken it into account within South African reasoning, and it plays a huge role in how, yeah, as an intern myself, it plays a huge role how people are introduced into the company and how development is more shaped so that each individual person's opinions are taken into consideration. This is more so prevalent since COVID had finished, or the era of COVID was finished. I believe that more people started to realize how valuable EQ was in just day-to-day daily activities, not even just in the long run, but just maintaining daily activities in a valuable manner that results in higher motivation and higher drive and is more impactful. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does. Thank you. Then my question now is towards Verona. So this is a personal question since you've shared your story. So some of the stuff that you said, I sort of resonate with, and one thing that that resonated with me was perfectionism. So as a person who's in our engineering field, you cannot work alone. So obviously, as you progress in your career, you have to delegate work. So as you delegate work, how did you, in your current leadership position, how did you manage to sort of, being a perfectionist, how did you sort of manage that perfectionism within your team and ensuring that it's a safe space for everyone and to ensure that your team thrives?
So honestly, it was very difficult at first because you have this mentality that no, I want to work alone, I can do it better, that kind of terrible, like when I look back at it, it's not the best mindset at all to have. I think who helped me the best was I had a really good manager And he told me that, you know what, you just have to let go, dive in and just let go. So obviously, it's this concept of getting out of your comfort zone. If you never do it, you're never going to grow. And so the first step was in one of the projects that I was working on. Like there was, maybe I'll just summarize it overview, because so maybe there's 10 items that I needed to do, and I knew that I could get help from a team member, and I could do it myself. There were two options. So start small, delegate at least one or two tasks to somebody else, and then work your way up to a point where you're feeling comfortable to have that trust. And that's the other thing. Trust your team. Like, building trust with your team will make it easier to delegate, because the perfectionism comes from a lack of trust in others that they're going to get it done at the standards that you set for yourself, the perfectionism standard. So you build trust in your team, train them, coach them well, start small, just a few actions delegated, and then you work your way up from there. I think that's how I kind of implemented it. Hope that answers the
Wonderful.
question.
Wonderful. Thank you. I think I'll start implementing that by small baby steps. Thank you so much. Then the last question. Then after the last question, we'll go into closing. So this question is for Juta. You mentioned the need for EQ in teams, right? So do you have any suggestions on how to break the ice within a team that doesn't have any implementation of EQ? And how would you go about breaking this ice?
Oh, that's a difficult one. I think putting everyone into a room and locking the door and turning the aircon off. No, I'm joking. But I think it starts with you. So why not be the starter case? And especially if people haven't worked as a group together, a contractor and a consultant, you can see that everyone's looking at each other and they've got that cagey look, and the contractor's trying to understand, what is he going to get bombed on for today, is to sort of put it onto the table and say, we are going to work as a team, and you have to prove that you're going to work as a team. So allowing everybody to have a say, allowing opinions to be spoken. And I think allowing people to feel free to state their opinion and say what is needed, but still to be respected afterwards, and feel like they can come back to the family gathering the next day. And with time, that bond will grow. So it might be a bit stilted in the beginning, but I firmly believe if you have one or two difficult customers around the table, maybe meet them aside, start getting to know who they are. Maybe they're very introverted people. Find out if they've got a dog. Do they have a wife? Do they have a husband? Do they have children? Speak to them about something that matters to them, that lights up their eyes, and start integrating them into conversation slowly, so that they're not shell-shocked. So I think each person, I always say a project has its own dance. Some do the cha-cha-cha, others do the tango. Understand what your project team dance is, and then have the respect to follow through with that dance. Hope that makes sense. That's a bit
Thank
oblique. Good.
No, that was a good, that was a wonderful answer. Just have two last questions. I'm just seeing them now in the Q&A. So the question is, how can we apply emotional intelligence in our efforts to end the discounting of fees? And the other question is, can EQ help us mitigate unattended consequences of unreliable engineering service fees and influence policy change?
Is that to me?
Yes, it's to you, sorry.
That alone could be a presentation, a very interesting topic, but I'll keep my opinion very short. So I think that you have various stages of project in that question. And the first is, when I'm putting together pricing, a tender price, you can have an inward-looking approach. I'm looking after my company only, and i.e. you're going to discount your prices. Or you can have an external view, which means I'm looking after the industry. Because if everyone discounts their prices, you actually start eroding the price, the whole structure that industry is built on. If you look at lawyers, they don't charge below a certain amount. They keep that buoyancy going, and that allows for professional work to be executed. So I think that EQ comes along with everyone who is pricing their documents. EQ comes along with consultants who put together scope of works to explain to the client not to put the lowest budget price together, as otherwise they will not get the best outcome, and allow for a good project team to be established. EQ also comes in terms of policy change. I'm trying to be quick here. I think CESA is the umbrella company or the umbrella forum, which if there was going to be policy change, it should come there, because they are all the professional engineers report to that forum. And maybe one should think about putting some kind of EQ approach into some kind of CESA regulated policy so that people adopt it at that level, and all the engineers in the industry then take it down to their companies when they are putting pricing together, etc.
Thank you, Jutta, for your answer. I think this ends off our Q&A session. Thank you for the wonderful speakers for answering those questions. I think some of them were tough, some of them there were jokes in between, but thank you everyone for answering your question. So now we're going into the closing remarks. So I will hand over to Shanice to do the closing remarks.
Hi everyone, a big thank you for joining today's webinar. I hope that you guys found the session both insightful and practical. I'd encourage you to maybe take a moment to reflect on one aspect of EQ that you can focus on this week. Maybe it's active listening, managing stress, or communicating more clearly, as these changes make a big difference in your day-to-day life. A big thank you to our speakers for sharing their experience and insights, and to all of you for engaging so actively. Your questions and participation really made the session valuable. A recording of today's webinar, along with the slides and other resources, will be shared so you can revisit any topics that we covered. Thank you again for joining us today. Wishing you all continued growth, success, and a wonderful day ahead.